Hello everyone, this is Caitlin and you are watching Zombie Eats Books. So I finally got around to reading some books this year and I have five to talk about. Four are books and then one is a graphic novel. But let's get on with it. The first book that I read was The Uncoupling by Meg Wolitzer, and it is a very small book, but it took me the longest out of all the books that I read, and that is because it is a very painful book. Painful to read because of what's happening in it. This is based on a play called Lysistra. I can't remember what it's called, but it is a Greek play about women who withhold sex from their husbands and tell them to stop the war that they're involved in. So if they stop the war, then they will have sex with them again. So this story, takes that play, and turns it into something really strange. There is a new drama teacher at the local high school, and she is, something's up with her. You're just not quite sure what it is, and she decides for that spring's play to put on Lysistra, that play, which I should probably mention seems completely inappropriate for a high school setting. But anyway, so what ends up happening is everyone involved, the female students, the parents of the female students, the female teachers, they all end up losing the desire for sex. They don't fall out of love with their partners, they just don't want to have sex with them anymore. So you see, of course, deterioration in all of these relationships, and it is just so painful to read for some reason. And I just didn't want to read it. I didn't want to go to the next couple and see how this was affecting them anymore, and that's why it took me so long to read. Also, what was really frustrating about it was that it was this outside force that was destroying these relationships, and it wasn't because of anything that was going on in the relationships. And one of the relationships in particular is like a really great, strong relationship that you just sort of admire, with these really likable people in it. And then, this starts to destroy it. It was just really frustrating. And if you're one of those people that doesn't like reading about relationships that are falling apart, then I absolutely don't recommend this book. It would be a nightmare for you. For me, I ended up giving it 3 stars because the writing is good. The writing is good. It's just not a subject that I wanted to read. And, even though it made me uncomfortable and it was painful, I should have felt compelled to finish it. And I didn't feel that way. It's a miracle that I finished this book. So that's why I inevitably had to give it a lower star rating. The next book I read was absolutely fantastic. It is Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. This is a historical fiction novel. It is about Thomas Cromwell's rise to power and his fall, and it is so unique. It's so interesting, the writing style. It's ambiguous at times. Mantel uses the pronoun he, and you're never really sure who she is referring to. I mean, usually it's Thomas Cromwell, but there are a bunch of other Thomases in this book, and just combined with the writing style, which is like sort of this dream-like narrative, it ends up just being kind of a confusing experience. But it's also a really unique experience, and as long as you're one of those readers that can just sort of go along for the ride and you don't need to understand every single sentence, then I would absolutely recommend this book, especially if you like historical fiction. Just give it a try, see if you like it. I'm definitely going to be reading more of Hilary Mantel. I'm going to read Bring Up the Bodies. That's the sequel to this book. And speaking of that, we all know how the story ends. I mean, Henry VIII is a famous king because of the fact that he married so many women and he killed the second one, and we all know how that story ends, but the way that she does it, the way that she tells that story is just really fantastic. So I ended up giving this 5 stars. It's probably not a 5-star book. It's probably more of a 4.5, 4-star book, but I just really appreciated how different it was. So I ended up giving it 5 stars. I also read the third volume of Black Science. The author is Rick Remender, and the artist is Matteo Scaleria. This is a fantastic graphic novel. If you like time travel, if you like it when time travel goes wrong, usually time travel does go wrong, uh, and you don't mind a protagonist who is a complete asshole, then absolutely read this. It's a great story. It's got a lot of twists and turns. There are alternate realities with different versions of the characters in it, and it gets a bit confusing at times, but totally worth the ride. Let me show you the art in here. I'm definitely going to be continuing this series. I do not know where it's going at all. I don't know. I'm imagining it's not going to be a happy ending, considering that everything just seems to go wrong. But it is really, really fun, and the end of this volume leaves you at such a cliffhanger. There's a revelation about one of the characters, and you just want to punch that character in the face, and that character does something, and it's just ugh. So I can't wait to get to volume 4. So I also read 2 young adult novels. I don't usually read that many young adult novels. I tend to get really I tend to feel really blah about young adult novels, and sometimes I come across a really great one and it gets me excited, but they are pretty easy novels, and when I just want a more plot driven read and not necessarily something that I want to soak in with like great prose or something, then I usually read a young adult novel. And since I've been so busy, I read 2 of them. The first one is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This was really fun. Like I said, plot driven kind of novel. It is well written. If you really like young adult novels, then definitely pick this up. It's pretty fun. It's not terribly original. It also doesn't exactly bring up interesting questions or anything like that. But it's about a girl, her name's Ruby, and she has these special powers. There are actually a lot of kids who have special powers, and the kids that do not have special powers start to die off. And the government takes the kids that have the special powers and put them in these camps where they are contained and no longer a danger to society, basically. So it's pretty much a dystopian novel. The only thing I would say about it is the minute I put it down, the minute that I finished it, I stopped thinking about it. So I don't think I'm gonna continue on with the second book in the series just because I've lost all desire to continue with the story. There wasn't anything different enough about it that made me feel compelled enough to continue with the storyline. Not that it was bad. If you really like young adult, like I said, you should pick it up. But since I'm not a huge young adult fan, I'm just probably not going to do that. So the other young adult novel that I read was Gates of Thread and Stone by Laura M. Lee. This book disappointed me in a way. I also gave this 3 out of 5 stars, but for kind of a different reason. I think I would have rated it higher if the author had been able to really fill in the fantasy world. If she had been able to do better world building, then I think I would definitely have liked this more. As it is, I was reading the story and trying to figure out what this world was that this character lived in because it was just so vague. And then there would be these details that she would throw in where I'd be like, huh? What is that? What does that mean? And, no more of those details. For instance, this is a monarchy. She lives under a king, I think. Maybe he's an emperor. I don't know. I don't remember. But she is very, very poor, and the rich are very, very rich. And, it's this society where there are a lot of things wrong. So it's kind of dystopian, but it also has fantasy in it. She has this power to manipulate time. And she's talking to this character at one point, and he has these relics from the past. And it totally threw me off when this guy is describing this relic, which I realized was a toaster. And I was like, what? A toaster is a relic of the past, so this is the future? I don't know, it was just really strange. Like I said, I think that it had a lot of potential for some really great world building because the world is unique, but it just didn't fill in those details that made me feel like I was immersed in this world or like I could visualize this world. So that was really my one big disappointment with this. Other than that, I really like the ending of this. I might actually continue with this series because I do want to know more about the protagonist's origins, where she comes from, and where some of the other characters might come from. And maybe hopefully the world building gets better as the series progresses. I don't know. I'm probably just going to have to rent it from the library because I don't think I want to buy the second book, but I am interested in reading it. Like I said, 3 stars, fun read. If you like fantasy and if you like young adult, you will probably like this. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll be able to put another one of these out in a couple of months after I've read like 3 more books. Really, the fact that I've only read 5 books this year is so sad. But summer is coming. Summer, I will have tons of time and hopefully catch up on my goal for the year, which is 100 books. And I am not doing very well with that goal. I am not progressing at the rate at which I should be progressing. But that's okay. We'll think positively. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.